So again, thank you for coming here. Let me first start by introducing everybody at the table, and then I'll give some comments. To my immediate right is Peter Wozlik, who is the lead ACLU of Rhode Island cooperating attorney handling this lawsuit. Next to him is Lynette Lavinger, another ACLU cooperating attorney assisting in the case. And then to my far right is Alexandra Morelli. She is the lead plaintiff in this lawsuit, and she is an employee who has been directly affected and harmed by the data breach that this lawsuit is all about. The ACLU has today filed a class action lawsuit against the Rhode Island Public Transit Authority and United Healthcare over last year's massive data breach at RIPTA that compromised the social security numbers as well as personal health care information of thousands of individuals, including many people who did not even work at RIPTA. As you'll hear in a few minutes, this data breach has caused enormous harm to many people. But just as important as getting legal relief for the individuals who've been harmed by the data breach, I think one of the most striking things to me, and one of the other reasons for the lawsuit, is to get answers as to how this happened. It is now more than a year since this breach occurred, yet we still don't have answers to many basic questions about this incident. For example, we don't know why RIPTA had personal information, including personal healthcare information, of over 15,000 employees who were not employed by RIPTA. We don't know how or why United Healthcare provided those records to RIPTA in the first place, or why RIPTA didn't inform United Healthcare that they had these records of individuals who didn't work for them. We don't know why it took RIPTA more than 4 months to notify affected individuals of the brief when state law requires that notification be provided within 45 days. We also don't know why RIPTA didn't tell any of these individuals in particular what information was taken about them. For some, it may have been their personal identifiable information like social security numbers, but for others, their personal health care information was also breached, but nobody has been told what information in particular has been taken. And finally, we don't know why RIPTA, when it first posted a notice about the breach back in December, stated that the breach only involved RIPTA employees when it knew that it affected many, many other employees. We believe that it's just as important to get answers to these questions as it is to obtain legal relief for the individuals who've been victimized by this breach. If we don't get those answers, then we think it will be way too easy for something like this to happen again. And I don't think anybody wants that to happen. So with that, I will turn it over to Peter, who will talk about some of the specifics in the complaint. Thank you.
Again, thank you all for coming today. And basically, just to go as an overview, this case is filed as a putative class action lawsuit, meaning there are 1 or 2 individuals who has stepped forward to represent the entire class of similarly situated people in the state of Rhode Island that have been harmed by this data breach. And we filed specific causes of action, which one of them is violation of the Identity Theft Act, state statute. It's the Rhode Island Identity Theft Act. And the second is the Confidentiality of Healthcare Communications Act. And that's particularly applicable to United Healthcare with respect to the healthcare and health insurance information that they possess. Also, we've alleged negligence and negligence per se. It's totally incomprehensible that an entity like United Healthcare, being part of one of United Healthcare of New England, as part of one of the largest health insurance companies in the country, would not have encrypted data and would send a file to RIPTA. It's particularly noteworthy that there was a Senate hearing, Rhode Island State Senate hearing. United Healthcare never participated and did not show up for that hearing. So basically, the lawsuit is looking to compensate financially and the individuals, and we're looking for equitable relief requiring the implementation of various safeguards, encryption, of data, etc. But that's just a brief overview of the case.
We have also set up a standalone email address for any members of the affected class or other folks who want to provide information to us, or they're looking for information about the lawsuit, and it's a long run-on word. RIPTA, data breach, pretty obvious, but RIPTA-DATA-BREACH at RIACLU.org.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexandra, and I'm one of the plaintiffs in the class action lawsuit against RIPTA and United Healthcare. From my understanding, thousands of individuals were affected, but I can personally speak to the stress that this has caused me. Earlier this year, I was notified about the data breach, and since then, my personal and financial information was compromised in multiple ways. Within a period of a few weeks, there were fraudulent withdrawals totaling thousands of dollars from my personal savings account, and several of my credit cards had fraudulent activities and purchases. Despite taking advantage of the free credit monitoring that was provided, I spent countless hours navigating a dysfunctional system without any assistance to undo the damage caused and prevent further damage. This entire experience was and has continued to be extremely frustrating and anxiety-provoking. I submitted reports to the Federal Trade Commission, reached out to the RIPTA hotline several times, contacted the Department of Administration, filed reports with the local and state police, spent countless hours communicating with my bank, and contacted the Attorney General's office without any success. My last recourse was to contact the local news in hopes that someone could assist me. I'm still confused as to why and how my information was shared with RIPTA, since I've never used this service, and extremely disappointed that RIPTA neglected to take responsibility and failed to advocate for myself and others affected, besides contracting with a hotline that provided inadequate support. To date, I'm still monitoring all activities and had to freeze several of my accounts. I've experienced the effect of the data breach around the time I was planning my wedding. It remains a matter of concern during my pregnancy. Although I appreciate the work ACLU and the cooperating attorneys are doing, I'm not participating in this lawsuit because I'm happy to do so. I'm participating in hopes to bring awareness to this issue and help others that may have been impacted or will be impacted by this data breach. There must be many other people like me who had to deal with the problems and anxiety this has caused. It's another reason I feel this lawsuit is important, because nobody else should have to go through this taxing experience. Thank you.
How do you feel about all this?
I don't know. It depends on the day.
Okay.
It depends on the day. I feel I am confused. Sometimes I'm frustrated. It's a wave of emotions.
Are you out actual money as a result of this?
Not anymore. I did get the money back. It was a significant amount of money, but also the time I had spent getting that money back, and even now, the time I'm spending now doing this is money.
Are you a state employee, or how do you get roped into this?
Yes, I am a state employee.
And you still will be through this?
Yes.
And how are you confident that the data breach is responsible for the fraudulent charges that were on your account?
More or less the timing. Is there something like that? I've never had anything like this happen to me before, so the timing of everything.
So Peter, question for you. The amount of plaintiffs, is it the 17,000 non-RIPTA state employees and then the 5,000? What's the plaintiff number?
That's part of what there's been so much confusion about. We think it's in the 22,000 range,
Okay.
the total plaintiffs, but there were mixed messages as to what categories and who was affected first. As Stephen Brown mentioned at the beginning, they indicated there was only 5,000, I believe, affected individuals.
So have you reached out to all, do you have the names and contacts for all of these individuals? Are you asking them to contact you via an email?
Correct. The way this happens is we don't have information to the 22,000. We file a class action lawsuit. We go to the court. It's called a putative class action. We request the judge to issue a class certification motion. And if that motion is approved and the class is certified, then we have access to the entire class. Now, that being said, we have been contacted, the ACLU has been contacted by numerous individuals. So there's a great concern amongst all of these individuals for their financial well-being.
And just one follow-up, the hearing that you mentioned that United Health didn't show up to, what exactly was that?
That was a hearing by the Rhode Island State Senate where they, it was in January of this year, where they had a hearing on the issue of the data breach, and the United Healthcare did not show up. The hearing, RIPTA employees did show up, and it was a hearing where the Senate committee, in an unusual fashion, it's not usually done in the legislative process, put the individuals testifying under oath. And RIPTA employees did show up and testify, but United Healthcare did not.
Did United Health not show up because they knew they were going to get sued?
That's a tough question to ask them that question.
Your first hurdle is the certification as a class.
Correct.
Say that happens and you're granted, I mean, how do you assess the chances of success in this case?
We assess this chance of success very good according to the allegations of negligence per se that we've alleged in the Identity Theft Protection Act, plus the violation of the Confidential Communications Act. The United Healthcare had confidential information, healthcare information of individuals, and willy-nilly sent the file off that had nothing to do with RIPTA with other state employees involved.
That seems fairly inexplicable that they would do that.
That's right, as I said, incomprehensible that an entity that size, United Healthcare of New England, which is part of United Healthcare Insurance Company nationwide, they are, I believe, the largest health insurer in the country with the most members, would not have, would do something that lacks.
Peter, a couple questions. So has United Healthcare been involved in any other data breaches around the country is my first part of the question. Second part, is there any other case law of any other large-scale organizations with similar type of data breaches? And if so, what were those outcomes?
So to the best of my knowledge, I have not seen any United Healthcare data breach cases. Yes, there are many, many other data breach cases nationally. And there have been many settlements with data breaches, the T-Mobile settlement, the Equifax settlement. So there have been significant recovery for individuals in some of these other data breach lawsuits. And with respect to health data breaches, also with respect to non-health data breaches, because you got two different categories. You have the personally identifiable information, social security number, etc. And then you have the personal health information, which sometimes is even more crucial to have, more affects an individual even to a greater degree, the harm that could cause.
Would you
Someone
say that
spirited away our copies of the complaint. What court is this filed?
The Rhode Island Superior Court.
Thank you.
Would you say that RIPTA mishandled this breach and then it in turn put all these people at risk?
Yes, it took 138 days to notify individuals, and state statute provides a 45-day calendar day notice requirement.
So what's the penalty for that? They clearly flouted state law.
It's a violation of state law, and we are alleging in the complaint asking for damages to compensate for that.
Are you aware of any other investigations being done federally or on a state level? Let's say the Attorney General or the state police, are they doing something? And how will this affect that investigation?
I understand that the Office of the Inspector General federally is looking at this, and I believe through press articles that the Rhode Island Attorney General is looking at that. And this should not affect those investigations because we are looking for compensation for the individuals that have been harmed. Usually when governmental entities take action, a lot of times they provide fines and to the companies, and a lot of times it's not individual compensation to each injured class member.
Right.
Alexandra, will a financial settlement make this better in the end for you? Will it help?
I think I've already done a lot of, I'm participating in this to help others that may be affected. I've already done what I needed to do to help myself. What was more frustrating is that there is no support, and there was no support, and there continues to be no support. So for me, I hope this works out. It doesn't.
You didn't work for RIPTA.
No.
You work for URI?
Yes.
And still do.
Yes.
Where are you from? Where do you live?
I live in Coventry. I'm in Rhode Island.
RIPTA said about an hour ago that they hadn't been notified about this lawsuit or had been served anything. Is that still the case, and do you have a timeline for when they can expect to be notified?
Yes, the case will be filed today.
And with this issue with RIPTA, is this something that you would call for, possibly with some other issues going on, for the stepping down of CEO of Adhesion?
With respect to this lawsuit, we're not going to get involved in that kind of discussion at all.
And who
I see
ultimately,
there's a trail, you gave us a couple of pieces of correspondence. Did that trail just end? It just ended like last December is their last response to you?
Yes, so when we learned about the breach in December of all the information, we sent a letter to RIPTA raising a number of questions, trying to get answers. They did send us a response initially, but from my perspective, their response only raised more questions, and we sent a follow-up letter that we did not hear back from. And as I said at the beginning, that remains one of the most frustrating things about all this, not just the harm that's been caused, but the fact that we have so few answers to how something as massive as this could have happened.
And I know you've set the questions out, so apologies if it's in there. Do we know when this data was transferred to RIPTA, when they were in possession of this edition? Is that one of the things they continue to refuse to answer? That's sort of the nuts and bolts of how the data was transferred from United Health to RIPTA. Obviously, finding out about the breach is a little more difficult. So do we know, or is that one of the things they refuse to answer?
Yeah, we don't know. And information that was given at the Senate hearing that Peter talked about was not very helpful in providing some sunlight on those questions.
It's possible.
is RIPTA on the hook for this as they're out of their budget, or will this come out of state funds? I just wonder, because RIPTA is very underfunded and probably won't be able to afford a very big lawsuit.
Again, that's to be determined. You know, there could be insurance involved. We have no idea at this point.
Okay.
Is this lawsuit meant to put some pressure on them to answer those questions, or is it possible we may never find out even as this goes through?
Well, we're hoping that it will put pressure, and through the litigation and the discovery process with litigation, we're hoping to get all the answers.